Dragon King Lucar Pell shattered the coronation vessel before Mavis Rook could tell him the poison had never touched her kiln. The first blow cracked the sunburst crest she and her husband had designed 22 years earlier. The second split the glass through its gold-veined heart. By the third, the final work bearing both their hands lay across the black floor of the sunken kiln, in bright, ruined pieces. No one in the guild moved. Heat breathed through the stone ribs of the chamber. Beneath the grates, the buried furnace glowed like banked sunset. Masters, apprentices, royal physicians, and court witnesses stood around Mavis while Lucar lowered the iron-striking rod. A thin line of blood crossed his bare palm. Mavis saw it. She hated that she still noticed his pain. Princess Glass Pell stood beside the coronation table in a silver-scaled gown. "The poison test was conclusive," she said. "Had my brother drunk from that vessel tomorrow, the coronation draft would have entered his blood." Mavis looked at the broken glass. "No poison entered it in my workshop. You sealed the vessel yourself." "I sealed the kiln. I did not guard the court vault." Guildmaster Saren shifted near the furnace rail. "A royal vessel remains the maker's responsibility until use." Mavis turned toward him. "That was not guild law when the glass left my hands. It was amended after the last vault breach." "By whom?" Saren did not answer quickly enough. Lucar's gaze met hers across the fragments. "Years ago, before the crown hardened every silence between them, he had come to the kiln after midnight, wearing plain gloves. Mavis had taught him to turn breath through molten glass without forcing it. He had learned that finished work held every mistake a careless hand tried to hide. Today he wore the black dragonstone signet of House Pell. "Mavis Rook," he said. "The royal assay found crown. Sleep poison inside the inner lip. Then it was placed there after cooling." Varel lifted the vault ledger. "No breach appears in the custody chain." "Then the chain was written to make the wrong hand responsible." A murmur moved through the guild. Lucar's left hand tightened around the striking rod. The movement was small. Mavis saw it anyway. He had not slept well in months. Gray shadowed the skin beneath his eyes, and a tremor moved once through his fingers before he forced them still. The court called it coronation strain. Mavis had seen the same tremor before, in her husband, before he died. Lucar held out his hand. "Your master seal." The guild drew one breath. Mavis wore the seal beneath her collar. Her husband had forged its bronze frame. She had earned the glass center after 12 years before the furnace. "On what finding?" "Poison was discovered in a vessel under your mark. Until inquiry is complete, your authority is suspended." Varel added, "You may not fire royal glass, teach crown apprentices, or enter the coronation vault." Mavis's female apprentices stood along the eastern wall. One lowered her eyes. Varel's voice softened. "This protects the guild from any appearance that grief influenced the crown." "What does my grief have to do with poison?" "You completed a design begun with your husband. Attachment can make a master careless with work she cannot bear to finish. The cruelty was shaped too carefully to sound cruel." Mavis removed the seal. She placed it in Lucar's wounded hand. "Your Majesty," she said, because the distance between them deserved its title. "You broke evidence before asking what the glass remembered." Lucar looked down. "Glass does not remember, not in the way kings prefer." The furnace shifted beneath them. A small red head appeared between two grates. Then another. Glass salamanders lived inside the oldest channels of the sunken kiln. They fed on discarded warmth and slept in ash when no trace remained. They did not judge guilt, choose masters, or answer affection. They followed retained heat in order of contact. If two hands touched the same glass, the older warmth sank first, and the newer warmth burned closer to the surface. The first salamander crawled onto the floor. Its body was translucent, bright along the spine. It crossed one fragment, then another. Wherever its feet touched, buried heat rose inside the glass. Guildmaster Saren whispered, "They have not surfaced during an inquiry in 60 years, because no one shattered warm trace glass above their channels in 60 years, Mavis said. Lucar looked at her. "You knew they would come?" "I knew they might. I did not know you would destroy the vessel before ordering the kiln test." He had not protected the evidence. He had created the only condition under which the hidden heat might become visible, but by accident and after condemning her. The lesson he had learned from her hands returned only after he used his own to destroy her husband's last design. More salamanders emerged. They crossed the fragments in sequence. The oldest trace burned low and pale. Mavis's hands at the blowpipe. A second line sank beside it, her apprentice steadying the stem. The third carried Guildmaster Saren's controlled heat as he pressed custody wax against the neck. Then a newer line appeared near the surface. Narrow. Red. It ran along the inner lip where the crown sleep poison had been found. A physician leaned closer. That could be furnace residue. No, Mavis said. She crouched among the shards. The salamanders found heat. Mavis read the crime. The vessel cooled evenly from base to rim. That red line does not belong to the kiln. Who? She pointed to the pale circular mark left by the royal assay. The test ring was pressed here. The red heat line crossed it instead of ending beneath it. Mavis felt the chamber inhale. After assay, she said. The inner lip was touched after the royal test, not before. Saren frowned. The vault wax was unbroken, because the poison was not poured through the mouth. She indicated a thread of red warmth narrowing along the inner curve. The lip was reheated locally. Small flame. Ringstone size. Enough to soften the surface without breaking the seal. Lucar's gaze moved toward the royal witnesses. Who held the vessel after assay? Varel lifted the ledger. The record shows no second custody. A sealed vault is only honest when every key is named, Mavis said. The salamanders left the fragments. They crossed the black floor carrying the newer heat toward the people who had stood nearest the vessel after the test. They passed Mavis, her apprentices, the physicians, the vault keeper. They did not stop at Varel's hand. The final salamander halted before the black moonstone chain hanging from her vault key. The red heat answered there first. Varel looked down but did not touch it. I supervised the assay. Residual warmth proves presence, nothing more. Mavis studied the chain, the key, and the unbroken vault wax. Varel was right about one thing. The trace was not enough to prove who had placed the poison. Not yet, but it proved the official custody record was false. Mavis looked from the moonstone chain to Lucar's shattered vessel. The glass had not accused its maker. It had traced a second custody after the assay. The salamanders had found a second heat. Mavis still had to prove whose hand the court had taught the chain to hide. Varel Pell did not remove the moonstone key from her waist. I supervised the royal assay, she said. My heat near the vessel proves only that I performed my duty. The trace did not end beneath the assay mark. Mavis replied. It crossed over it. According to your interpretation, according to the order of retained warmth, Guildmaster Saren stepped between them and the shattered vessel. Kiln traces are craft evidence, not crown evidence. They may justify further inquiry. They do not overturn the maker's responsibility. On their tan. On their seven. On their seven. Kiln traces are craft evidence. Mavis looked at him. You amended that responsibility. After the last vault breach, then show us the amendment. Lucar's hand closed around her master seal. The tremor returned. This time it reached his wrist before he controlled it. Every fragment is to be preserved, he ordered. No one touches Varel's chain, the vault key, the assay ring, or the custody wax until each has been examined. The royal physicians began collecting the pieces in shallow iron trays. Mavis rose from the floor. You broke my husband's last work, she said. Do not pretend preserving the pieces is justice. Lucar did not offer regret. He looked at the sunburst crest divided across 3 fragments. Justice is not what I have done yet. He turned to the vault keeper. Open the coronation vault. The procession left the sunken kiln before the salamanders returned to their channels. Mavis's apprentices carried the trays, while armed witnesses walked on both sides. The royal vault lay below the eastern palace, where the stone held no furnace warmth. Its doors were made from layered black glass and silver iron. 3 keyholes divided the central crest. The vault keeper produced the ledger. Every authorized entry is marked by time, key, and purpose. A sealed vault is only honest when every key is named, Mavis said. Varel's expression did not change. All crown access is recorded. The keeper opened the book. Mavis read the final entries. Guildmaster Saren had delivered the vessel after cooling and applied the first custody wax. The vault keeper had received it. 2 royal physicians had performed the poison assay. Varel had supervised. The vessel had then been resealed and returned to the inner chamber. No later name appeared. Lucar touched one line. What is this mark? A narrow dragon crest had been pressed into the margin without a written identity. The keeper hesitated. Royal family privilege. Whose privilege? The mark records blood access without requiring the royal name. Mavis looked at Varel. You said every key was named. Royal blood is not required to enter itself into a servant ledger, Varel replied. Then the chain was never complete. It was complete under palace law. It was written to hide whichever royal hand entered last. Saren closed the ledger halfway. The privilege mark does not prove the vessel was touched. It proves someone entered after the assay. The inner chamber contains coronation robes, seals, and regalia. Any member of House Pell could have entered for another purpose. Lucar's gaze sharpened. How many royal family keys exist? 3, the keeper said. Mine, Varel's. Whose is the third? The late queen's key remains sealed in the memorial reliquary. Bring it. The keeper left under guard. Mavis examined the privilege mark. Its lower edge carried a faint crescent where wax had been pressed against metal still warm from skin. Whoever used the key did not wear gloves. Virela lifted one hand. I do not wear gloves during assay. Nor after? Not unless the vault is cold. Saren said. This remains speculation. Mavis turned to him. Then let us examine the law that made speculation enough to strip my seal. The guild amendment was kept in a smaller archive beside the vault office. Saren requested that only senior masters enter. Lucar refused. Mavis Rook enters. She is suspended. Her suspension prevents guild authority. It does not prevent testimony. Lucar still held her seal. He had not returned it. He had also not allowed Saren to destroy or reassign it. Stopping the inquiry was not mercy. It was fear that the broken glass might remember more than his court had allowed. The amendment record bore Saren's signature. Maker responsibility extended beyond kiln release, beyond guild custody, and through final royal use whenever the vessel carried a master seal. Mavis read the supporting argument. The last vault breach involved a missing ceremonial cup. Yes, Saren said, and no maker had access to the vault. The crown required someone to remain accountable. So you chose the person whose seal stayed visible after every hidden hand disappeared. The guild needed royal contracts. Without this amendment, the palace would have withdrawn coronation work. You protected the guild by placing every future crime on the maker. I protected hundreds of workers from losing their livelihoods. Saren's motive was not poison. It was survival purchased with someone else's exposure. He had not placed poison in the glass. He had placed responsibility where poison would need it to fall. Lucar read the amendment twice. You approved this without requiring named custody after kiln release. Saren's jaw tightened. The palace would not surrender royal privilege access. And you allowed the maker's seal to carry responsibility through an unnamed chain. It was the only agreement the crown accepted. Mavis looked at Lucar. Your court demanded invisible hands. My guild offered them a visible widow. His left hand shook again. The ledger slipped against the table. This time, Mavis caught his wrist before the book fell. The pulse beneath his skin stumbled. Lucar looked at her hand. So did Virel. Mavis released him immediately. How long? Lucar's voice hardened. This is not part of the inquiry. It may be the beginning of it. Virel moved closer. My brother has carried coronation strain for months. Mavis looked at the gray beneath his eyes, the stiffness in his fingers, and the slight delay before his grip returned. Crown, sleep does not always put a body to sleep at once. The physicians went still. Thinned through furnace tonic, Mavis continued. It teaches the hand to tremble before it teaches the body to stop. Lucar's face changed. Fornace tonic? My husband drank it during the final year of his life. Saren looked away. Mavis saw him do it. The poison in your vessel did not begin with you, she told Lucar. I buried its first tremor beside my husband. She turned to Saren. Bring me his death record. The guildmaster said nothing. Lucar gave the order. The record arrived in a narrow ash-gray file. Mavis opened it with hands that had once washed soot from her husband's fingers. The symptoms were listed in careful script. Weakness after heat. Loss of grip. Night tremors. Irregular pulse. Progressive collapse. At the bottom, the guild physician had written the official cause. Furnace exhaustion. But beside the final entry, Nearly hidden beneath Saren's witness seal appeared a second notation: coronation strain, not Lucar's coronation. The phrase was older than the crown he had not yet received. It was not a symptom. It was a palace name for poison no one had wished to name. The phrase at the bottom of her husband's death record was older than Lucar's coronation. Guildmaster Saren rested both hands on the archive table. Coronation strain was a broad palace diagnosis. It covered collapse among workers assigned to royal commissions. Why use a coronation term for a glassmaker dying in his own workshop? Mavis asked. Because the commission belonged to the crown. No. Because the true cause belonged to the crown. Saren's expression tightened. My witness seal confirms that the record was filed. It does not certify the physician's conclusion. You stood beside his bed. I stood beside many guild beds that winter. You brought the tonic. Silence entered the vault office. Lucar looked at Saren. Did you? Furnace tonic was standard for masters working prolonged heat. From the guild dispensary? Saren hesitated. Some supplies came through the palace apothecary. Mavis closed the death file. Open the tonic ledgers. Varel stepped toward the table. You are turning one falsified custody entry into an accusation against 22 years of royal medicine. I am asking who supplied the same symptoms to two men. My brother's condition has not been diagnosed as poisoning. Because your physicians gave the tremor a name before they tested its cause. Lucar's fingers closed around Mavis's master seal. Returning it would not return the vessel. Mavis would not let him confuse restraint with repair. Open the ledgers, he ordered. The palace apothecary records were kept in a narrow chamber behind the royal infirmary. Its shelves smelled of bitter bark, dried citrus, and metal salts. A clerk brought out the furnace tonic accounts while two physicians examined Lucar under the pretense of checking his coronation fitness. Mavis ignored them. Lucar's tremor needed an antidote. Her life needed the record that had killed her husband to be named. The ledger showed regular guild purchases during the final year of her husband's life. Most entries listed willow bark, saltroot, cooling mint, and ironberry. Then the formula changed. A new mineral base appeared beneath a palace code. Silverdusk. Mavis touched the line. What is this? The apothecary clerk looked toward Varel. A royal stabilizing compound. For what? Heat fatigue. Tremor. Irregular pulse. It was prescribed for symptoms it could cause. Varel said. That conclusion has not been established. Mavis opened Lucar's current tonic record. The same code appeared. Silverdusk. The same dosage pattern. The same palace authorization. Lucar read over her shoulder. How long have I been given this? The royal physician answered carefully. Since the winter council began. Who approved it? The princess authorized continuity of treatment after the former physician retired. Varel did not step back. My brother refused public examination. I preserved the treatment already in use. You preserved a poison because the symptoms looked familiar, Mavis said. I preserved a formula used safely for generations. Safely for whom? Saren said. Glass masters accepted furnace tonic willingly. No one forced it upon Mavis's husband. He trusted the guild label. As did every worker. That does not make the bottle honest. The clerk brought a sealed sample of the current mixture. Mavis removed the stopper and smelled the liquid. Bitter mineral. Sweet resin beneath it. A faint metallic cold that remained after the scent was gone. Her husband had carried that smell home in his breath. She had mistaken it for the furnace. Crown. Sleep does not kill quickly when thinned through tonic, she said. A full dose stills the body. A measured dose weakens grip, disturbs pulse, and makes exhaustion look inevitable. One physician frowned. You are a glassmaker, not an apothecary. I watched a man die by inches while your profession called it labor. Even if the old tonic was tainted, it does not prove deliberate poisoning. Contaminated minerals could have entered during preparation. Then show the preparation records. The clerk turned several pages. The mineral compound had not been mixed in the public dispensary. It arrived in sealed black vials from the royal coronation stores. Lucar's voice lowered. Why would coronation stores supply guild tonic? Saren answered before the clerk could. Royal commissions required royal, approved restoratives. You signed the receipts, Mavis said. I signed delivery to protect the guild allotment. Did you test it? No. Did you question why my husband worsened each time he drank it? He worked too many hours. He worked fewer after his hands began to fail. He refused rest. He refused to abandon the vessel. The shattered coronation glass seemed to stand between them even inside the infirmary archive. Her husband had spent his final year refining the sunburst crest. After his death, Mavis had completed the work because leaving it unfinished would have allowed the crown to turn his labor into a discarded draft. Lucar had destroyed it in 3 blows. Saren looked at her with something close to shame. He believed the flaw was in the glass. Mavis went still. What flaw? He asked for the royal cullet deliveries to be tested. He said the newest batches behaved differently under heat. Why was I never told? He had no proof, so you buried the concern with him. I prevented panic in a guild already losing contracts. Her husband had not died because the furnace took too much from him. He had died because someone learned how to make poison look like labor. Lucar looked at Saren. Where are his final work notes? Stored with the commission drafts. Bring them. The pages arrived tied in smoke-dark cord. Mavis recognized the pressure of her husband's hand before she opened them. His final sketches showed the coronation vessel from every angle. The stem balance, the inner lip, the sunburst crest, and the measurements for royal cullet. Near the last page, his writing became uneven. The new glass sings too cold. Not the furnace. Not my hands. The supply carries something sealed inside it. Below the words, he had drawn a narrow crescent beside the mark used on the black tonic vials. Mavis held the page beneath the apothecary lamp. A dark impression appeared along the paper's edge. Not ink, a shallow heat scar pressed into the fibers by warm metal. Lucar leaned closer. The shape was a crescent clasp with one broken point. Varel's moonstone vault chain carried the same clasp. Not merely the same design, the same broken point. The mark did not name the poisoner yet. It named royal access older than Lucar's illness. The broken clasp did not yet name a poisoner. It named a royal hand older than Lucar's illness. Varel removed the moonstone chain from her waist and placed it on the apothecary table. The clasp belonged to our mother's vault office, she said. I inherited it with the coronation keys after her death. Mavis did not touch the chain. How long did the late queen carry it? Nearly 30 years. Then the mark on my husband's notes proves royal access existed before Lucar's treatment began. It proves the chain touched an archive page. A page hidden after its writer questioned royal glass supply. Varel looked toward Lucar. Grief has taught her to make sequence sound like intent. No, Mavis said. My trade taught me that sequence is what careless power hopes no one measures. Saren lifted the sketch by its edges. The note concerns royal cullet. Glass supply was never under guild jurisdiction. That did not stop you from signing for it. I confirmed weight and delivery, not composition. You accepted material you were forbidden to test, then held the maker responsible for whatever it became. The crown owned the supply, and the guild owned the blame. Lucar's hand trembled again. He set Mavis's master seal on the table beside the broken clasp, rather than close his fist around it. He still did not return it. Mavis noticed the distinction. Moving her seal from his possession into evidence was restraint. It was not repair. Poison might explain his tremor. It did not explain the 3 blows he had chosen to strike. Open the royal cullet records, he said. Virelle faced him. The coronation is tomorrow. Then the records should be close at hand. If you delay the rite because a widow interprets an old burn mark, every border house will hear weakness before sunrise. Lucar looked at Mavis. She did not rescue him from the choice. He had destroyed her standing in public because he feared appearing partial. If he wished to correct the inquiry, he would have to risk appearing vulnerable before the same court. The records, he repeated. The coronation supply archive occupied a sealed chamber beneath the royal treasury. Its shelves held invoices for gold leaf, dragonstone dust, ceremonial oils, furnace salts, and cullet reserved for crown glass. Mavis opened the deliveries from the year her husband became ill. For the first 8 months, the cullet had come from the western glass fields. Clear weight, expected cooling time, stable tone. Then the supplier changed. The new batches came through the coronation stores under a palace purification order. Mavis found her husband's first complaint in the margin of a guild receipt. Sings too cold after second breath. She placed the note beside his final sketch. Same pressure, same warning. Saren said, Masters often describe difficult glass as singing. Not like this. Mavis turned to one of her former apprentices, who had carried the records under guard. What does ordinary crown cullet sound like when drawn thin? The young woman answered carefully. High at the rim, warm beneath it, and contaminated cullet? A flat note first. Then a cold echo after the glass leaves the flame. Saren's jaw tightened. Mavis had taught the apprentice that difference. The guild had treated the lesson as widow's caution. Her husband had died trying to name the same sound. Lucar examined the purification order. What was used to wash the cullet? The treasury clerk read the formula. Lime water, ash salt, silver dusk mineral. The chamber became still. The same coated mineral base appeared in the furnace tonic. Varel spoke first. Silver dusk was used throughout the palace. Its presence in 2 supplies proves contamination, not design. Then show us every contaminated delivery, Mavis said. The clerk brought the distribution ledger. Silver dusk had not entered common window glass. It had not entered merchant bottles, guild lampwork, or household medicine. It appeared only in materials assigned to royal commissions, and in tonics issued to masters working those commissions. Saren stared at the columns. That could reflect centralized purchasing. It reflects selection, Mavis replied. The same stores supplied both categories. Exactly. Varel's voice cooled. You are describing an industrial failure. No. An accident spreads where the material travels. Mavis laid out the records. This followed a purpose. Royal glass received the wash. The masters who questioned it received the tonic. My husband noticed the cullet first. His hands failed before he could finish proving why. Saren said, other masters drank the same formula. How many died? He did not answer. Bring the guild sickness rolls. That will take time. You found my suspension order quickly enough. Lucar looked at Saren. Bring them. The guildmaster left under guard. Varel moved closer to her brother. If you suspend the coronation, the council may invoke incapacity review. Lucar's expression remained hard. They already know I am unwell. They know you are tired. They do not know your hands fail. They will when I refuse to lift the coronation vessel. You would hand them the regency question yourself. Mavis understood the trap. If Lucar proceeded, the poison could enter him through another cup, or his weakness could be concealed until Varel controlled treatment and access. If he delayed, the court could declare him unable to govern. But his danger did not cancel hers. Lucar had been poisoned by the same court. Mavis had been ruined by his hand. He turned to her. If the coronation is delayed, the inquiry becomes public. It should already be public. The guild accusation against you will be challenged. Challenged is not corrected. His gaze dropped to her seal. I can suspend the suspension. Returning my seal in private would only hide another broken thing. What do you require? The guild must hear that its law protected unnamed royal hands. The court must hear that the vessel left my kiln clean. My husband's death must be reopened under its true symptoms. And the fragments? They remain evidence. The answer cost her. She would not pretend evidence was the same as restoration. Lucar nodded once. Then he summoned the coronation herald. At dawn, announced that the rite is delayed under active poison inquiry. My illness will be entered into the public record. Varel's control slipped for less than a breath. You may lose the council. I may already have lost more than I knew. Mavis did not soften. He had finally chosen truth over appearance. He had chosen it after appearance had already cost her everything. The reliquary keeper arrived carrying the late queen's sealed key inside a crystal case. The wax around it bore an unbroken funerary mark. Varel looked almost relieved. Our mother's key has not left that case since her burial. The keeper opened it before witnesses. The old royal key lay beneath black silk, attached to a moonstone chain. Mavis leaned closer. The clasp carried one broken point, but the scar did not face outward like Varel's. It faced inward, where a second chain had once been joined to it. The late queen's key had not merely carried the same damaged clasp. It had been part of the same divided chain. The divided chain changed the question from who owned the key to who had been permitted to disappear behind it. Mavis studied the inward-facing break on the late queen's clasp. This was not damage, she said. It was made to separate. The reliquary keeper frowned. The chain was recorded as whole at the queen's burial. Recorded by whom? He looked toward Varel. The royal household office. Virela did not flinch. My mother used paired custody during the border conspiracies. One chain remained with the vault key. The second was carried by the officer, authorized to act in her name. And after her death? Lucar asked. The office passed to me. Mavis looked at the moonstone chain Varel had placed on the table. 2 halves. 1 authority. 2 entries capable of appearing as 1 royal privilege mark. The ledger never needed to name which half entered, Mavis said. Varel answered evenly. That was the purpose of royal continuity. If the queen was ill, absent, or under threat, her office still functioned. Without a named hand. With protected authority. A protected authority that touched my husband's notes. The clasp may have pressed the paper while the file was transferred. Transferred where? To the Queen's medical archive, perhaps. He worked on a royal commission. Mavis turned to Saren. Did you send his notes to the palace? Saren had returned with the guild sickness rolls beneath one arm. Not formally. That is not an answer. A royal clerk requested selected records after his death. Which records? His final sketches. Tonic receipts. Furnace reports. Under whose authority? The late Queen's household office. Varel said. Then the mark has an ordinary explanation. No, Mavis replied. It has a lawful explanation. That is not the same thing. Lucar's hand tightened against the edge of the table. His illness was now public by royal order, though the herald had not yet crossed the palace gates. The coronation delay would reach the council within the hour. Poison might have entered his body without his knowledge. The striking rod had not entered his hand without choice. Mavis did not allow his weakness to soften that difference. Saren placed the sickness rolls before her. These records concern private guild families. They concern workers supplied by the same crown stores. You have no master authority while suspended. Lucar looked at Mavis's seal where it rested beside the evidence. She has inquiry standing. That is not guild standing. Mavis opened the first roll herself. Then charge me after you explain the dead. The names extended across 15 years. Masters who had collapsed during royal work. Journeymen removed from furnace duty after tremors. Polishers whose grip failed. 2 cutters who died in sleep after months of irregular pulse. The official causes varied. Heat decline. Mineral weakness. Furnace exhaustion. Coronation strain. Mavis marked each worker assigned to a royal commission. The pattern narrowed. Workers using common guild glass suffered ordinary burns, lung damage, and age. Workers handling palace cullet developed the same cold tremor. How many received silver dusk tonic? She asked. Saren did not answer. One of Mavis's former apprentices stepped forward. Aline had been 14 when Mavis's husband died. She was now a senior finisher with burn scars across 2 fingers. I can cross the guild ration books, she said. Saren turned on her. You will not remove protected accounts. I do not need to remove them. Aline opened the supply index from memory. She named 7 dead masters. All 7 had worked royal glass. All 7 had received tonic from sealed palace vials. Mavis looked at Saren. You knew the pattern. I knew royal work exhausted people. You knew the same hands failed after the same deliveries. I knew refusing crown commissions would close the sunken kiln. So you kept the fire alive by feeding it masters. His face hardened. You speak as though I had choices untouched by consequence. You had choices. You placed the consequence on workers who trusted you. Varel moved to the sickness roll. 7 cases over 15 years do not establish a deliberate program. Royal commissions demand longer hours and finer work. The same labor could explain the same collapse. Mavis placed her husband's note beside the cullet ledger. The glass changed before the bodies did, according to one man's private description. According to every furnace complaint, Saren refused to classify. A line found 3 more entries. Cold echo after second breath. Unstable rim song. Silver haze under clear heat. Each complaint appeared weeks before the worker received furnace tonic. The sequence repeated. Contaminated cullet. Complaint. Donits. Tremor. Death or dismissal. Saren sat down. He had not poisoned them. He had made repetition look like coincidence because the guild could survive coincidence. Lucar read the names. How many families were told the palace material might be involved? None, Saren said. How many compensation claims were filed? None could be supported. Because you classified the deaths as labor illness. Because the crown did not compensate unproven contamination. Mavis's voice remained quiet. Saren called it furnace exhaustion because labor is the easiest coffin for a craftsman. The herald arrived at the archive doors. Your Majesty, the council requests confirmation. Are you delaying coronation on the word of a suspended glassmaker? Lucar's tremor passed visibly through his hand. He did not hide it. The coronation is delayed under poison inquiry. The council asks whether you submit to an incapacity examination. Yes. Varel turned sharply. Lucar. He looked at her. If I refuse examination while accusing others of hiding poison, I become another sealed door. The herald bowed and left. Mavis felt no gratitude. He had chosen public risk only after private certainty failed him. Still, the choice mattered. Varel gathered the two halves of the chain without joining them. My mother's office investigated dangerous materials. That explains the archive contact, the tonic supplies, and the cullet records. Then where are her findings? Mavis asked. Sealed with her private papers. Open them. They are protected by death privilege. 7 workers lost the privilege of living. The Queen's sealed papers cannot be opened without the King, the royal heir, and the keeper of the burial flame. Lucar said, Summon the keeper. Virel's gaze held his. You would violate our mother's burial seal because Mavis Rook cannot accept that her husband died from his work. Mavis stepped closer. My husband died questioning your supply. You buried the question under his labor and called my grief instability when I remembered the symptoms. Varel's voice lowered. You are not the only widow royal necessity has made. For the first time, something personal entered her restraint. Not guilt. Recognition sharpened into resentment. The burial flamekeeper arrived before noon. The late Queen's private case was brought under black cloth and opened before witnesses. Inside lay medical reports, cullet samples, and a list of workers marked for continued observation. Mavis found her husband's name first. Beside it appeared the date of his final collapse. A second column named the officer assigned to receive his next report. Not the late Queen. Princess Glass Pell. And beneath Varel's name in the Queen's own hand stood a final instruction. Do not permit the glassmaker to reach Lucar. The late Queen's instruction had not explained why Mavis's husband was kept from Lucar. It proved someone had known he was trying to reach him. Varel Pell placed one hand beside the opened case. My mother believed the glassmaker posed a threat. Mavis looked again at the final line. Then why assign you to receive his next report? To determine whether his claims endangered the coronation work. He was dying. He was handling unstable royal material while physically compromised. Material your office supplied. Guildmaster Saren stepped nearer. If he suspected the cullet, he may also have altered it during private tests. And because you failed to record those tests, Mavis said, you can now call them tampering. I am stating what the late Queen may have feared. You are giving her silence the meaning most useful to you. Lucar read the instruction again. No evidence followed it. Only the command that the glassmaker must not reach him. At the time, Lucar had been serving on the southern border while his mother controlled palace medicine, coronation stores, and royal correspondence. Did he request an audience with me? Lucar asked. Saren looked down. He asked to send you a sealed warning. What happened to it? The guild delayed it pending proof. For how long? Saren did not answer. Mavis searched beneath the observation list and found a folded sheet in her husband's hand. To Prince Lucar Pell, concerning the cold song in royal glass and the sickness following those who shape it. The letter ended there. The rest had been cut away. Mavis ran one finger along the missing edge. The fibers are pressed inward. This page was cut while bound inside the archive. The burial flamekeeper leaned closer. Then the letter reached the Queen's office intact. And someone shortened it after filing, Mavis said. Varel's expression did not change. Or my mother removed an unsupported accusation. Then why preserve the opening? To record what he intended, while destroying what he discovered. Lucar's hand trembled against the table. Mavis's master seal gave a small metallic sound beneath his fingers. He had been poisoned by a system older than his reign. Mavis had still been ruined by his own hand. One truth did not erase the other. Who opened this case after the Queen's death? He asked. The royal heirs and the burial office. The keeper said. Lucar had refused private access during mourning. Virelle had not. Lucar looked at his sister. Did you read this file? Yes. Did you investigate the missing page? Our mother had already ordered the glassmaker kept from you. No, Mavis said. She ordered that he not reach Lucar. That is not the same as naming him dangerous. Varel's voice cooled. You want the court to believe one sick craftsman discovered a royal poison network while overworked and handling unstable glass. I want the court to stop using his sickness as evidence that he imagined what caused it. Saren said. His judgment declined near the end. His grip declined. His measurements did not. Mavis opened the final sketches. Cooling times were marked to half breaths. Batch weights aligned across 6 deliveries. The dates showed he identified the altered cullet months before the tremors became severe. Lucar turned to the royal physician. Can slow crown, sleep impair judgment before tremor? Usually only after prolonged weakness. Mavis laid the dated notes in order. He knew the glass was wrong before the poison could have confused him. Varel read the dates. It still does not prove murder. No, Mavis said. It proves the palace isolated the man reporting the danger, and assigned me to assess him. You were very young. 17. The correction came too quickly. Lucar's gaze sharpened. What did you assess? Virele pauset. His sample, tonic record, and request to contact you. And your conclusion? That accusing the royal stores without proof would threaten guild contracts, succession preparations, and every furnace serving the crown. Mavis understood. Varel had not created the system. She had learned inside it. A craftsman's death was acceptable uncertainty. A royal scandal was unacceptable risk. What happened to his sample? Mavis asked. It was returned to the coronation stores. Which batch? I do not remember. You remember your age? The burial flamekeeper found a small inventory card beneath the case lining. 1 glass sample removed. 1 tonic vial removed. Both transferred under the paired chain authority of the Queen's vault office. The receiving name had been scraped away, but the wax beside it retained a guild impression. Saren's. Lucar looked at him. You received the evidence. I received a sealed return packet. Did you open it? No. Where is it now? The old poison files were moved after her husband died. Moved where? Mavis asked. To the disused lower furnace beneath the master workshop. Mavis knew the chamber. It had been sealed the same year her husband was buried. The guild had called it structural failure. Now she understood it had been containment. Open it. Saren's jaw tightened. Without a master seal, you cannot enter a restricted guild furnace. Lucar reached toward the bronze frame. Mavis stopped him. Not here. Why? Because returning it in a burial chamber would let the guild call this private correction. She looked at Saren. My seal was taken before the full guild. My authority will be restored before the full guild, or not at all. Lucar lowered his hand. Until then, Mavis would enter the lower furnace without the title they had taken from her. Not as a master restored by a king, as the widow of the man whose evidence they had sealed beneath her own workshop. Behind them, the burial flamekeeper lifted the empty case lining. A final inscription had been hidden beneath it. Transfer all remaining silver dusk evidence to the lower furnace before Prince Lucar returns. The order carried no queen's seal. It carried Varel's. By noon, every master in the sunken kiln had been summoned to witness the opening of the chamber they had been told was unsafe for 22 years. Mavis stood outside the lower furnace without her seal. Lucar stood beside her with the bronze frame resting in his palm. Guildmaster Saren faced the assembled guild from the black stair. The lower chamber was closed after structural damage. Opening it without a certified master risks collapse, contamination, and loss of protected guild material. Mavis looked at the unbroken stone arch. There is no settling crack. Saren's expression hardened. You cannot certify that without authority. I built the cooling channels behind that wall. Before your suspension. Stone does not forget my hands because you removed a seal. A few older masters lowered their eyes. The female apprentices stood together near the furnace rail. Aline held the sickness rolls against her chest. Lucar addressed the guild. The chamber will be opened under crown inquiry. Saren replied. The crown does not govern furnace safety. No, Mavis said. The guild does. Which is why the guild must explain why it used a false safety order to hide poison evidence beneath an active workshop. Saren turned toward her. You have not proved the order false. Mavis pointed to the sealed doorway. No brace marks, no repair pins. No pressure vents added after closure. If the chamber had been unstable, Heat from the upper kiln would have opened fractures along the lintel within one winter. She touched the stone. It has held for 22. The guild heard the difference between accusation and knowledge. Sara had procedure. Mavis had the wall. Lucar looked toward the senior masters. Who among you will certify the arch? None moved at first. Then a line stepped forward. I will. Saren's face tightened. You are a finisher, not a furnace master. I trained under Mavis Rook for 14 years. You do not hold the chamber seal. No one does, Aline replied. That was the purpose of closing it. 2 more masters joined her. They examined the arch, the floor line, and the old vent channels. No structural failure, one said at last. The other touched the sealing wax. This was closed by administrative order. Mavis looked at Saren. Read it. He did not. Lucar handed the order to Aline. She broke the outer cover. The closure had been issued 3 days after Mavis's husband died. Cause, dangerous material retention. Not collapse. Not furnace damage. Retention. The guild shifted behind them. Saren said. The chamber contained contaminated supplies. Sealing it protected the workshop. Then why tell the guild the stone was failing? Mavis asked. To prevent panic. You protected them from truth by leaving the poison beneath their feet. It was sealed. So was the vault. Varel stood several steps above them, wearing no moonstone chain now. The order proves containment, not conspiracy. Mavis looked toward her. It proves your transfer reached the chamber. It proves evidence was stored. Without inquiry. Because your husband was dead and the material remained unstable. Then why was I never told it existed? Varel answered without hesitation. Because you were grieving, and the guild believed disclosure would compromise your judgment. The insult was dressed as care again. Mavis did not raise her voice. My husband's death had been renamed once. You will not rename my exclusion as protection. Lucar's hand closed around her seal. He did not return it. Instead, he placed it on the public guild table, where every master could see. This remains under inquiry, he said. It will not be reassigned, melted, or privately restored. Mavis met his gaze. For once he understood the difference. The chamber door opened. Cold air moved outward. Not furnace cold. Chemical cold. Inside, shelves lined the walls beneath layers of ashcloth. Sealed black vials stood beside wrapped cullet samples, cut pages, physician slips, and broken tools taken from dead workers. Saren stopped at the threshold. Mavis entered first. No master seal admitted her. Her own knowledge did. Aline followed. Lucar came after them. Then Varel, Saren, and the witnesses. The nearest shelf held her husband's return packet. His name had been scraped from the label, but Mavis recognized the cord knot he used when tying work notes. Inside lay 1 cullet shard and 1 empty tonic vial. The shard looked clear. Mavis lifted it toward the chamber lamp. A faint silver haze moved beneath the surface. Was this tested? Lucar asked. Saren replied. The guild lacked authority to examine royal material. You had authority to bury it. We had authority to contain risk. Mavis turned the shard slowly. A narrow scoring line crossed one edge, her husband's test mark. He tried to separate the mineral from the glass. Aline opened his remaining notes. He succeeded once. The final page described a method using repeated cooling to force silver dust toward the surface. At the bottom, her husband had written, "The poison does not belong to the glass. It is carried in the wash. Remove the wash, and the cullet clears." Mavis closed her eyes. He had not merely suspected contamination. He had found how to prove it. Saren said, "The method was incomplete." "Because he died before repeating it," Mavis replied. Varel examined the empty vial. "The tonic sample contains no liquid. Because someone emptied it. Or because it evaporated." Crown. Sleep mineral does not evaporate. The chamber clerk brought a shallow black tray from the rear shelf. 7 vial stoppers lay inside. Each carried the same silver residue. Each belonged to a worker named in the sickness rolls. Aline read the attached notation. Samples retained after adverse reaction. Mavis looked at Saren. "You knew the tonic caused harm." "I knew workers reacted badly." "And you kept assigning royal commissions?" "I kept the guild alive." "You kept the contracts alive." The distinction struck harder. Saren looked toward the masters gathered outside the chamber. If the guild had refused royal work, hundreds would have lost bread. Mavis held up the 7 stoppers. 7 lost their lives so the rest could keep calling the work honorable. Lucar's tremor worsened. He braced one hand against the shelf. Varel moved toward him. Mavis moved faster. Do not give him the palace tonic. Virel stopped. I was reaching for my brother. You have spent months controlling what reaches him. The witnesses heard it. So did Lucar. He straightened without accepting either woman's hand. At the back of the chamber stood one final locked coffer. Its seal bore the paired chain crest. Varel said, "That belongs to the royal household." Mavis examined the hinge. No. It belongs to whoever feared the samples more than the poison. Lucar ordered it opened. Inside were payment records from the coronation stores. Not for cullet, not for medicine, for silence. Each dead worker's family had received a small guild pension funded through a hidden royal account. The authorizing mark belonged to Varel's office, but the counter-signature belonged to someone else. The old king. Lucar's father had known. The hidden pensions did not prove mercy. They proved the crown had priced silence. Mavis spread the payment records across the guild table while the masters, apprentices, and furnace workers gathered around them. Each entry named a dead craftsman, a surviving family member, and a yearly payment drawn from the coronation stores. Beside every amount stood the same condition: no public claim against royal material. Lucar Pell read the clause without changing expression. My father feared panic in the guild. Compensation was offered to protect families while uncertain causes were reviewed. Reviewed by whom? Mavis asked. The royal household and senior guild officers. The same offices that supplied the cullet, supplied the tonic, and classified the deaths. Saren stood beside the lower furnace door. The pensions kept widows and children from starving. They also ended if a family questioned why someone died, because unsupported accusations could destroy the guild. Mavis lifted one record. This widow was paid for 6 years. The payments stopped 1 month after she requested her husband's tonic bottle. Saren looked at the floor. Another record showed a cutter's son dismissed from apprenticeship after asking why his father's hands had turned cold before death. A third family had been moved away from the sunken kiln under a royal relocation grant. The ledger did not merely pay grief. It separated grief from witnesses. Lucar read his father's countersignature at the bottom of every page. The old king had approved the account while Lucar served at the border. Varel had administered it after their mother died. Saren had certified the guild recipients. 3 institutions. 1 silence. Varel faced her brother. Our father believed the kingdom could not survive a collapse in royal production. The border furnaces needed glass. The signal towers needed lenses. The succession right needed a vessel. And workers were made expendable, Lucar said. They were protected as far as the evidence allowed. Mavis looked at him. Do not let her make you clean by making your father dirty. The guild quieted. Lucar met her eyes. She continued. Your father signed the payments. Varel maintained them. Saren kept the guild obedient. But you took my seal and broke the vessel before any of these records were opened. His face tightened. I know. No, you know now. That is not the same as having known before you struck. He did not defend himself. The distinction mattered more than remorse would have. Lucar ordered the lower furnace records carried into the main kiln under witness. Every vial stopper, cullet sample, pension ledger, and cut report was placed where the full guild could see. Mavis walked behind the evidence. She did not walk beside the king. At the central furnace, the masters formed a ring around the guild table. Saren took his official place at its head. Mavis remained outside the marked circle. Her suspended status still barred her from standing among them. Aline looked at the line, then at the bronze seal resting beside Lucar. Guildmaster, she said. The accusation against Mavis Rook was made before us all. Saren said nothing. The evidence clearing her kiln now stands before us all. The inquiry is not complete. The vessel left her workshop without crown, sleep, Aline replied. The second heat crossed the assay mark. The custody record hid royal access. The maker, responsibility amendment placed blame beyond her control. Saren's jaw tightened. The amendment remains guild law. Then guild law remains dishonest. Several apprentices stepped forward beside Aline. Not one was old enough to remember Mavis before widowhood. All had learned from the methods the guild dismissed as grief-born caution. Lucar reached for the master seal. Mavis spoke before he could lift it. No. He stopped. Returning it is necessary. Not from your hand. A murmur moved through the chamber. Varel watched carefully. Mavis faced the guild. The crown removed my authority to prove it did not favor me. If the crown returns it alone, the guild can say I was restored, because the king regretted his choice. What do you require? Saren asked. The guild must correct the finding it helped create. Saren looked toward the masters who depended on royal contracts. If we restore her before final judgment, we risk the palace commission. Lucar's voice hardened. The commission is already suspended. Mavis did not look at him. This is not yours to settle. For the first time, Saren stood without crown pressure to hide behind. A line entered the master circle. She took the seal from the table. 2 other female apprentices joined her, carrying the guild register and the broken maker responsibility amendment. Saren could have ordered them back. He did not. A line read the correction aloud. The coronation vessel left the sunken kiln clean. Poison entered after guild custody ended. Master Mavis Rook's suspension was imposed under a law that concealed unnamed royal hands. One by one, the senior masters added their witness marks. Saren added his last. Not as confession. As accountability he could no longer postpone. Aline placed the seal in Mavis's palm. The apprentices, not the king, restored what the guild had taken. Mavis closed her fingers around the bronze frame. It felt heavier than before. Her husband's work remained shattered. His death remained falsely named in the royal record. The seal restored her authority. It did not restore what authority had failed to protect. Varel turned toward Lucar. You have delayed coronation, admitted physical weakness, suspended a royal commission, and allowed guild law to be overturned under active inquiry. I allowed evidence to be heard. You have created the exact condition the council prepared for. The palace bells began ringing above the kiln. Not coronation bells, regency bells. A royal messenger entered carrying a black-edged decree. The council had accepted Lucar's public incapacity examination. Until he was declared fit, executive authority would pass to the nearest blood heir, Princess Glass Pell, and the decree had been drafted 3 weeks before the vessel was ever poisoned. The regency decree had been waiting longer than the poisoned vessel. Varel Pell took the black-edged parchment from the messenger and broke the council seal herself. It was prepared when Lucar's physicians first reported progressive weakness, she said. Mavis stood inside the master circle with her restored seal in her hand. 3 weeks before the coronation glass was poisoned. Before the poison was discovered. Varel corrected. Not necessarily before it entered the court. Lucar read the decree. It named tremor, loss of grip, interrupted pulse, and inability to complete the coronation rite. Symptoms the palace had called strain. Symptoms the decree had already converted into succession law. Who supplied the council's medical report? He asked. The royal infirmary. The physicians whose tonic carried silver dusk? The same physicians you refused to question until today. The answer was cruel because it was true. Lucar had hidden weakness to preserve authority. Varel had built authority around what he hid. The council messenger stepped forward. Under incapacity law, Princess Varel assumes executive control until the king is certified fit. All coronation evidence, royal workshop material, and guild records connected to the right pass into regency custody. Aline tightened her hold on the sickness rolls. Mavis said, No. Royal commissions remain crown property. The messenger replied. The broken vessel is evidence against the crown. The regent determines custody. Then the accused office intends to seize the proof. Varel folded the decree. My office is not accused. A chain, an old mark, and contaminated supplies have raised questions. Until they are tested, the kingdom requires stable custody. Stable custody hid 7 dead workers under pensions. It also kept their families fed. On the condition that they remained silent. On the condition that panic did not close the furnaces feeding the border. The masters shifted. Without crown contracts, the sunken kiln could lose half its winter work. Apprentices would be dismissed first. Families who had just witnessed Mavis restored might still choose bread over truth. Saren saw it too. If the regency withdraws royal commission, the guild cannot carry all current wages. Mavis turned toward him. You used that sentence to bury my husband. I am telling you the danger remains. So does the poison. Royal guards entered the upper gallery carrying evidence chests and crown-lock chains. Lucar moved toward them. The messenger raised one hand. Your Majesty, any command concerning Regency custody may be judged interference. For one breath, Lucar looked ready to break his own law by force. Mavis stopped him. Do not save the workshop by making it another royal exception. What would you have me do? Stand where your decree places you, and watch what power looks like when it is not yours. Mavis crossed toward the oldest furnace wall. The royal crest of House Pell had been fused above the central mouth for more than a century. Its black dragon marked the sunken kiln as a crown workshop, giving the palace first claim on its fires, apprentices, and sealed designs. Varel understood before the others. Mavis, step away from the furnace. Mavis handed Aline the records and fitted her restored master seal into the control plate beside the vent. The channels opened. Deep heat moved through the wall. You cannot alter crown property under Regency order, Varel said. Mavis turned the vent wheel. I am not altering the crown. The black crest began to glow. I'm removing it from my fire. Saren stared at the wall. No master has severed the royal workshop bond since the ash famine. Then no master has had better cause. The guards advanced. Lucar stepped between them and the furnace. He gave no command. He simply stood there, unarmed, legally suspended, forcing them to decide whether Regency custody required striking their king before the guild. They stopped. Mavis increased the heat. The glass wings folded inward. The dragon's neck bent under the honest pressure of flame. Varel's composure cracked. If you remove the crest, every crown protection attached to this kiln ends. No royal fuel, border exemption, or treasury wage guarantee. Mavis looked at the apprentices who had carried evidence when masters would not. Then the workshop will know exactly what the crown's protection costs. Aline placed the sickness rolls on the public table. We will stay. Other apprentices joined her. Senior masters followed more slowly. Saren remained last. He looked at the hidden pensions and poison stoppers, then removed the royal commission clasp from his robe. The guild can survive fewer orders, he said. It cannot survive another buried furnace. Mavis pulled the release lever. The crest slid from the wall in molten black glass and struck the stone basin below. No salamander emerged. No magic judged the act. A master glassmaker had heated the bond until it could no longer pretend to be permanent. Mavis faced Varel across the ruined crest. The sunken kiln no longer belongs to the court. Its evidence remains under guild witness until an independent hearing. Varel raised the Regency decree. You have placed every worker here outside royal protection. No. You taught us that protection without named responsibility is another word for ownership. Lucar stood beside the melted crest, his left hand shaking openly. Mavis did not take it. He had allowed the guild to choose without royal command. That was not forgiveness. It was the first decision he had made without using authority to spare himself. The messenger opened a second parchment. There is one further Regency order. He read it aloud. The regent could remove any witness whose craft judgment was compromised by bereavement, divided loyalty, or intimate attachment to the king. The order named only one person, Mavis Rook. Beneath her name, written before the coronation vessel left the kiln, stood the sentence Varel had been waiting to use. Confine the widow before she teaches the glass to testify. The confinement order had been written before Mavis did the thing it claimed to fear. She took the parchment from the messenger and laid it beside the Regency decree. Read the final line again. The messenger hesitated. Varel answered for him. Confine the widow before she teaches the glass to testify. Mavis looked toward the full guild. The coronation vessel had not yet left my workshop when this was drafted. The Glass Salamanders had not surfaced. No inquiry had begun. Varel remained beside the black-edged decree. My mother's archives described the old kiln creatures. I knew what Mavis might attempt if grief turned her against the crown. You knew the glass could expose a custody hidden after assay. I knew she possessed a method the court could not control. And you prepared to imprison me before the poison was found. To protect a coronation already threatened by an unstable king and an emotionally compromised maker. Lucar did not move when she called him unstable. Mavis did. She carried the confinement order to the public guild table and placed it beside her husband's cut letter. The silver dusk records. The hidden pensions. And the original custody ledger. No single page proves the whole crime, she said. That is how your office survived. Varel's eyes narrowed. Fragments do not become truth merely because a widow arranges them. No. Sequence makes them evidence. Mavis pointed in order. Her husband discovered altered royal cullet. His warning to Lucar was stopped. His tonic carried the same silver dusk base. His samples were sealed beneath the workshop. The families of dead masters were paid to remain silent. Lucar received the same tonic when his hands began to fail. A poisoned coronation vessel passed through unnamed royal privilege access. A regency decree was drafted before the poison inquiry, and Mavis's confinement was ordered before the glass exposed the hidden custody. The chain was not broken, Mavis said. It was written to make the wrong hand responsible. Varel faced the guild. My father approved the pensions. My mother controlled the first investigation. Saren accepted the royal supplies. Lucar concealed his illness. Yet you placed the entire structure at my feet. No, Mavis replied. I place your decisions there. Varel had inherited a system built to make poisoned hands look tired. She had also chosen to preserve it, sharpen it, and prepare power for herself before Lucar collapsed. Mavis lifted Varel's moonstone chain. The princess did not stop her. This clasp can produce the reheating mark found on the vessel's inner lip. It can produce heat, Varel said. So can 100 royal tools. Then let the guild test it. Saren ordered a clean glass strip brought from an uncontaminated batch. Aline placed it on the assay stone before the gathered masters. Mavis did not perform the test herself. She handed the chain to 3 apprentices. Independent hands, she said. Independent record. They heated the moonstone clasp to the temperature listed in Mavis's husband's notes and pressed it against the strip. A narrow crescent appeared. 1 broken point. The exact width of the red reheating line preserved in the coronation fragments. Aline applied the royal poison reagent. Silver-gray residue rose from the inner groove of the clasp. Varel said, The chain passed through coronation stores for decades. Mavis nodded. The residue proves contact, not the date. She turned toward Lucar. The custody ledger proves access after assay. The fragments prove local reheating. The pre-written confinement proves someone expected the glass to challenge the official story. The evidence did not make the chain speak guilt. It made Varel's explanation too small to contain everything. The council representatives waiting above the kiln began withdrawing from her side. Virelli saw them. Her composure did not collapse. My brother was failing, she said. Border houses were preparing to divide the kingdom. The guild would have closed if royal contamination became public. I preserved succession, production, and order. With poisoned workers beneath it, Mavis said. With a kingdom above them. That is the difference between us. You believe the people below the crown are material. Lucar stepped into the master circle. His hand trembled openly. I submit to an independent fitness examination. Until it is complete, Varel will not hold regency. The council messenger protested. The decree names the nearest blood heir. The named heir is under active inquiry for manipulating the conditions that triggered the decree. Lucar removed the royal signet from his hand. A temporary council will govern with representatives from the border, treasury, guilds, and common wards. No member of House Pell will hold unilateral authority. Varel looked at him. You would weaken the dynasty to punish me. No, I would stop using the dynasty as proof of its own innocence. He ordered her confined under guarded residence, not condemned. Her trial would examine poisoning, suppression of evidence, misuse of royal access, and preparation of a fraudulent regency. Saren lost control of royal contracts and submitted to guild review. The Maker Responsibility Amendment was burned before the full guild. Every death-marked furnace, exhaustion, or coronation strain was reopened. Mavis's husband became the first. His record was corrected. Death by prolonged crown sleep exposure while investigating contaminated royal supply. The coronation vessel remained shattered. No decree repaired it. Mavis preserved the fragments in an open guild archive, each piece labeled with the hands that it had shaped, guarded, broken, and finally understood it. The sunken kiln remained independent. Months later, Lucar came to its threshold without a crown, guards, or master seal. His treatment had steadied his pulse, though his left hand still trembled when tired. He carried a box containing the smallest fragments of the sunburst crest. Mavis stood behind the white furnace line. You may leave them there. I came to help catalog them. You are not permitted beyond the line. I know. He set the box down and remained outside. You once entered this workshop in plain gloves, she said. I thought hiding my title made me humble. It only made your power easier to forget. He accepted that. I cannot restore what I broke. No. I can continue naming that I broke it. That is not the same as repair. No. For several moments, neither moved. Then Mavis placed a low workbench outside the furnace line. You may sort the cold fragments, she said. Aline will supervise you. Lucar looked at the bench, then at her. It was not forgiveness. It was not invitation into the fire. It was work offered at the boundary he had earned. He sat down. Mavis returned to the furnace, where her apprentices were shaping a new vessel that belonged to no coronation and carried no royal crest. Behind her, Lucar lifted the first broken piece with both hands. This time, he treated the glass as something his power did not own,